Hi, I'm Brian Baxter. Welcome to Creative InnerView. We're coming to you today from the studio door, and today I have the privilege of talking to Lauren Siry. Lauren is the artist and director of 1805 Gallery. Lauren, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to start out talking about your creative process, and a lot of the artists that we've had on, they've talked about starting from a very young age and just following through in their creative process. Is that the same for you?
Yes, actually, I feel like when I was younger, I was always interested in drawing everything around me and, just being creative, maybe in not traditional ways. Like for instance, I would save trash. So I would collect the styrofoam from television boxes and electronic boxes, and I would collect those weird styrofoam that had the impressions of the shapes of the electronic items. So like televisions, it would have little divots, and then I would collect those and bring them to my room when I was little, and I would create a little city out of them. And so I felt like I would see possibility in trash, and I would, be creative in that sense. So if it wasn't drawing or painting with watercolor or finger paints, it was something like making sculptures or miniature cities out of things like that. So I felt like I was always curious as a child, and part of that was, being a hoarder of trash to create art out of it. So that's kind of how I operated, I guess, as a creative child.
I see it. And so now what sparks your creative process? I'm assuming that you don't collect a lot of trash right now.
Well, you'd be surprised. I feel like I still collect materials and textures to find inspiration for different things, not knowing exactly what I'll use materials for later on, but just finding beauty in those little things like buttons or some texture in a paper that I really like that I might use later. So I do have to say I hoard wallpaper rolls because the texture is so beautiful to me, not knowing later on what that'll become. So in a way that still informs my process, but also, for my research in that creative process, I read a lot. I try to absorb as much information as possible. So whether it's, listening to the news or reading a book about science or philosophy or about the arts, I feel like I try to consume as much information about the world around me constantly.
Right.
I feel like a lot of my art stems from those explorations.
Yeah, so I know that some reading has sparked some creativity. You had a series sparked by some of the reading that you've done, some classic reading.
Yes. So when I was younger in high school, I took a really wonderful English course, and in that course I was exposed to James Joyce, and so that's when I read Portrait of an Artist as a young man, and in that book there was an allusion to Icarus, and so then I began really looking into the myth of Icarus, and I became obsessed, and I started really looking into, what was this myth, why am I so drawn to this myth of Icarus? And for those who don't know what the myth is, it's about a boy, Icarus, and his father, Daedalus, who was an architect and craftsman, and they became trapped on the island of Crete, and in order to escape, the father created these wings made of wax and feathers that he found around the island, and created these beautiful wings that looked like bird wings for his son and himself to escape. And he told his son that in order to escape and survive, he must not fly too close to the sun or else his wings will melt and he'll die. And he must not fly too close to the water or his feathers will soak and he will die. So it's about kind of maintaining this middle ground. And the myth goes that Icarus disobeyed his father and flew too close to the sun and then ended up falling to his death. And even though, this was a tragic story, there's that moment of him giving in to the passion and excitement of taking that leap and going, towards passion and embracing that, and just accepting the risk of failure. And I think that's what I'm most interested about that. So that's why it's a whole process of, this book will inform my research into this myth and thinking about ways that that myth actually connect deeply in a universal level to people.
Right.
And thinking about how can we embrace failure in our life in order to, really go for what we want to be passionate about, and to kind of give in a little bit to take that chance. So I feel like there's these like connections and a thread that is tied in, and one little spark of inspiration can become an entire series.
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the piece that you brought in. What inspired this one here?
So from this series is called I Am What I Think You Think I Am. And it's from a longer quote by Cooley. So he was a sociologist, and he had this theory called the looking glass self. And it's about how we create our identities based off of how we think others perceive us. So the full quote is, I am not what I think I am. I am not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. And so I just found that to be so interesting and so beautiful, because it just, shines a light on we are constructed by the people we surround ourselves with and who we're familiar with. It talks about how a community really shapes who you are. And so that's why in these two figures, they are both colliding into each other and moving out from each other. So there's this constant feedback loop that you can kind of see with the movement of this painting. And so in a way, this painting kind of helped me through that idea.
Gotcha.
And the process of painting this is actually very important to me. Because I first started with a board, which was trash, actually. So I did take this from a gallery that was closing, a board, and I turned it into a panel for my paintings.
Okay.
So that in itself kind of takes away the intimidation, I think, from approaching a white canvas, because I think all artists can understand that horrible fear of walking up to a white canvas and not knowing like what to say and how to start. And I think taking that leap into the unknown, again, like back to Icarus, that is a challenge. And I think it's just accepting fear as a part of the process and kind of working through it is really important. So I took this whiteboard and I just started making marks. I started making marks with black acrylic paint directly onto this white panel. And then from that, I started to just spend time with this panel full of random marks. And after a while, just, sitting with my coffee in front of this abstract mess of marks, I started to see the figure emerge. I started to see shapes move together to create anatomical structures. And it was just spending time and seeing and looking. And I think that goes back to also a very childlike approach where, children look up at the sky and see a cloud and start to see animals and, people in that cloud shape. And I think something about that is exciting, and it really calls you to slow down and reflect and, look deeper. That's why this series was always exciting for me, because I never knew how it will come together. I didn't know what the end result was going to be. And it was always taking a risk that, this might not look amazing, but it was about the process of really embracing the chaos and bringing some order into it by identifying patterns.
So do you find the medium then is really kind of informs your creative process as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I tried different mediums also. I feel like that definitely informs a lot of my series. So that was a huge part of this process. And also my Icarus series, when I was investigating the myth of Icarus, I created an entire series of watercolor and ink paintings that also followed a similar structure, where I started putting random watercolor marks on a piece of paper. And then from that, I, started to see the figure, and then bring in line work to show it to other people so that others could see the figure with me. And I think that was a big part of it too. Kind of communicating that process to others. But I explored that series then in multiple other mediums, like sculpture. I actually created a life-size sculpture that was also a figure, supposed to link to the Icarus figure. of the falling, falling body in space, and I created this sculpture with kind of this trash around my studio. So it's kind of a similar, I want the medium to also be a part of the message, and I think that's really significant in the process, linking to the original concept. So the idea of, jumping into the unknown and taking that leap. It was the process of me randomly putting a watercolor mark on a pristine white paper and then going from there, finding the success in that kind of jump, that leap.
Got you.
But yeah, that's how it goes.
So how did your transition from an artist to having 1805 Gallery, how did that happen?
So 1805 Gallery started actually as my art studio space. So it was a 100 square foot storage unit in Little Italy, and blacked out windows, terrible floors full of like filing boxes, and I decided to open that as my gallery or art studio space / gallery space. I, would have my art practice after work. I would go to the studio, and then on the weekends I'd open it up. But I felt like I needed just more of a sense of community, and I think that was really important to me. So I started reaching out to other artists and offering that opportunity to showcase their work to a larger audience. I began inviting artists to do residencies at the gallery, and they would propose projects, and I'd look at the proposal and talk with them about their ideas, and I would then invite them to stay for about a month or two and create the project in the space. And so it became such a wonderful way to engage the community and invite them in to talk about ideas through artwork and through that process, that creative process. And because the studio gallery has windows that are quite large, anyone can just peek in walking by and see an artist at work. And I thought that was really important to start to see that more in our everyday life, and to be exposed to different ideas and diverse artists and cultures.
So what do you look for in somebody that you want to partner with or curate or want to work with in general?
I think someone who's very curious and someone who's very ambitious. I think it's important for an artist to have kind of a burning question that drives their practice. And I think that is what really interests me, to see an artist that becomes obsessed with something, that really pushes the concept to the limits. Perhaps it's through different mediums, or going outside of their field to better understand that one question that's driving their research. So for me, I think it's like process-based is a huge part of that, but also having some type of conceptual or intellectually challenging ideas that what can I say differently about this? Like, how can I explore this topic in a new way?
Yeah, and it was such a small space that kind of helped people be creative and try to think of how they'd fit in that space and how they'd work there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like it was such a small space that artists were able to transform the entire space with either an installation or their paintings. And I think it really pushed them, it challenged their art practice to think about, okay, how could I transform this space? How can I communicate my ideas to a larger audience with what I have here, like utilizing every nook and cranny and window. So another local artist, Melissa Walter, completely transformed it by installing these strings, and she took these ideas of dark energy and brought it into the gallery space to talk about these concepts with an audience that maybe wouldn't normally interact with these ideas. And she was able to reconstruct this idea of dark energy through a thread installation, where threads came out from a wall and fanned out towards the windows, so that it crossed and created these dimensions within the gallery space. And the way you experienced it was just from the outside, since she decided to lock the gallery so you could only view it from outside. And I thought, what a wonderful way to experience art in such an unusual way, where you actually are not allowed to go inside. You can only look in through the windows. So it was nice to see how artists approached the residency and what type of projects they proposed. But yeah, it became just a really wonderful way to connect with a larger community.
And so you also have the Porta Vista Hotel that you curate as well. So let's talk about that. How'd that start and built up? There's a lot going on there now, right?
There's a lot, yeah. So last year, so when I moved back, I actually went to school to get my master's in London, and then when I came back, I decided to focus all my energy on 1805 Gallery and start these projects, something more experimental and more ambitious. And then I realized, even after expanding 1805 Gallery, I wanted to expand more. And I just, nothing could contain me. And I think it was just a matter of, I was just excited. And I saw so much potential. After being away for a year, I was traveling the world. Because London was so central, I was able to see so many different countries and, see how they were doing it and how they were, supporting the arts and how arts was transforming people's lives and, creating a community. And I thought, I know that this can happen for San Diego, and it is. Like, there's so many incredible artists here, and I just wanted to be a part of setting that network up of possibility and a platform for artists to showcase their work to a larger audience. And that's when I started working on some more projects, a lot of offsite projects. One of them being the Porta Vista Hotel, where I started to develop an art program, and it happened organically and slowly, where I've had ideas to have more like alternative exhibitions, like say in an elevator. And these were ideas that I've written down in the past that, at some point I would love to do this. And there's always that voice in your mind that's so critical. It says, okay, well, what if you fail? Like, what is it's that failure again? And it's about just going for it. And so at some point I was like, okay, I just have to do it. I just have to go out there and do it. And so I proposed the Conveyor Project, which is an elevator art installation that changes every few years. And that was for the hotel's elevator, which was known to be one of the slowest elevators in San Diego. And so that's when we invited artist Daniel Baron Corrales. And so he created an art installation in the space using painting and light installation. Right? Yeah, and it was just such a beautiful way to make that a unique experience, like something that no one would consider, oh, there must be an art, piece in the elevator. It's such a surprise. And starting out slowly with these projects like this, really you start to see how it's affecting people's everyday experiences. Right. And so that started expanding and expanding, where now the art program is, it is focused on these commission projects. So we actually pay the artist to come in and create a sketch and also to complete the installation on site. So we're actually creating like a financially stable network for artists to find work. And that's also going into murals throughout the space. So we have an artist, Sarah Steiber, who has just completed a 12-foot by 25-foot mural on the rooftop. So that overlooks the harbor, and you can see it from the street, which is really nice. And so we have the murals in unusual spaces in the hotel. And then now we're going to be launching a residency. And so this is going to be an international artist and curator residency, where we're inviting international artists and curators to stay on site for about 3 months and work on a project that explores, a topic that they're investigating or some type of community engagement event. So I mean, it's just expanding more and more every day.
Exactly. So where can people find out information for you online or in all these new projects that you're having? Because it doesn't sound like you're going to stop. So it's going to be a lot more in the future.
So we're online on Instagram and Facebook and website, 1805gallery.com. But also just expanding to the Porta Vista Hotel's website. So
it's 1805 Gallery just about everywhere, yes? And then the Porta Vista Hotel as well? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us today. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Well, that's it for this time on the Creative Interview. Thanks for watching and stay creative.